Welcome to another episode of the Playful Lens. This is a really interesting episode. We speak with Kate Maher from Dúlra Cill Dara. She talks to us about the value of risky play and how important it is for our overall well-being, how it is an antidote to anxiety. She also gives us little insights into how we can incorporate little elements of risky play into our school life. Welcome to the Playful Lens podcast. We are thrilled to have you and thank you for taking the time to speak with us. So would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. My name is Kate Maher and I am the founder and lead facilitator at Dúlra Cill Dara. We're a Kildare-based social enterprise and we do regular outdoor sessions for all ages, all members of the community based on the forest school ethos. And our aim is connecting with self, with others and with nature through exploration, play and learning.
Exploration, play and learning. That's
Amazing.
fantastic.
So, Kate, why did you set up Dúlra? Was there a moment in your personal life, in your professional life, when you thought this needs to exist? What sparked Dúlra?
Dúlra has been a very long time germinating. I was fortunate enough to have quite an alternative childhood. My parents felt very strongly about educational ethos, and they were part of a group that set up the first Waldorf school or Steiner school in the Republic of Ireland,
Amazing.
which has a very strong emphasis on both play and nature. So this was the norm for me as a child, to spend time in creative play, to spend time in nature. And I kind of assumed that that was what every childhood was like, because it certainly was the childhoods that I read about in books were quite similar. Then coming into a mainstream secondary school and understanding that this wasn't always the case for everyone, I went away to art school, but already with a very strong idea in my head that I wanted to go and develop a program for children based around nature and play and creativity. And that took me on a journey to teacher training, because I knew that parents and schools weren't likely to just give over their children to somebody who said, I'm going to bring them into the woods and play with them. So I wanted to have a qualification to back that up. I was lucky enough to go to Plymouth University, which is they're not alternative, but they're very discerning in their teacher training. They encourage you to be quite critical in your thinking, in your approach to education, and then spent 7 years in mainstream education in London, hoping to be able to do this from the inside, to be honest, and realizing that I was just being asked to compromise on too much in terms of what we were supposed to do versus what I knew the children in front of me needed. And so I finally got the courage to set up this program in 2021, and it was on a lovely hike up in Glendalough that I met a woman who was talking to me about what she was doing, which was forest school. And I was talking to her about what I wanted to do. And she was saying, I really think that what you're talking about is the forest school ethos, the forest school program. And so I decided I would go and do 3 days of training on this just to get some basic skills and things. I went in the first day of training. Elizabeth Swift unrolled a ball of string and talked us through 2.5 million years of human evolution. And we got to the last few centimeters and she said, and this is how long we've had schools for, and this is how long we've had curriculums for. And the whole thing, the whole pedagogy, human behavioral evolution, sociology, anthropology, everything in there. And I was like, I am sold. This is my thing. So yeah, so that's been since 2021, and 4 years ago, and we're now going strong. Yeah.
Very good. And you mentioned that you were in London, and I know the forest schools are very big in England. We have friends, my little boy's friend does forest school, and it's part of their week. She does it every Thursday. And they make jam and they swing in the trees and they jump in the puddles. And every time I'm chatting to her and her mum, I'm thinking, that sounds gorgeous. I'll be over on Thursday. It sounds just fabulous. So would you think it's more common in England than it is here?
From my experience in schools and in the education system in England versus the same in Ireland, I feel that because of the level of, not just the level, but the scale and the pace of social change that schools in England are faced with on a daily basis, they have had to be a lot more revolutionary in how they approach and address these issues. And we've been blessed with a certain level of stability in this country. And with that, I think has come a certain level of conservatism, not in terms of politically, but just in we do what we do. And I feel that in some ways, our education system is unpracticed at risk taking.
Yes.
And it is a risk to say, I need these children for two hours minimum a week. And I can't promise you that within 6 weeks you're going to see a change, because they're like, but you're just taking them outside to play with them. Like, you're not doing any proper work. They're not doing any proper work. Where is this going to show up on my stats? Where is this going to show up in performance reviews? Where is this going to show up on their exam results? And the answer is it's not now, but this is a long-term process. It's going to show up in years, and it's going to show up when they're teenagers, and it's going to show up when they're adults, and it's going to show up when they're coworkers and when they're parents themselves. Playing the long game with a resource as precious as childhood, it's a challenge.
It's so important though, isn't it? And which we forget it all the time. We're playing the long game.
Yeah,
When
we
we're
are.
raising children, we are playing the long game. So we, as you know, try and talk about play. So you said you just bring them outside and you play with them. And you said, trust me, there's lots of benefits to this. So Kate, can you talk to us a little bit about the benefits that you've mentioned there of that outdoor play or that nature-based play?
Absolutely. It's an interesting one because what it looks like from the outside is that you're just having a play. What's not seen is the level of facilitation and planning and review and reflection that goes into it on the part of the highly qualified professionals who deliver for example, the Forest School program. So the play, when we look at it, we're looking at a full range of kind of holistic benefits. So from your physical development, we're talking about gross motor skills. We're talking about your development of proprioception, your vestibular senses. We're talking physiologically about your interoception, about space for children to learn how things feel inside them. And that's a rare thing these days, because for that to happen, you need to be kind of unstimulated in a way.
You need to be in your body, don't you?
Mhm.
To be in your body, yes. To really be able to listen to, okay, what does it feel like when I feel hungry? What does it feel like? What does it feel like when I need to go to the toilet? What does it feel like when I feel anxious? What does it feel like when I am
Angry.
taking a risk? What does it feel like? What does it feel like when I'm angry? Yes. And these are feelings that if you don't understand them younger and know how to act on them, when you're older, as a teenager, as an adult even, it's very difficult to manage them. It's very difficult to know this feels risky, but I think, it's more of an adrenaline type thing, so I'm happy to go with it. Or this feels risky, dangerous risky. I've got that feeling in my stomach that tells me this is not a good idea. And then huge amount of self-regulation that comes with that. And it's funny because we talk about a lot of this to do with mental or mental well-being or psychological health, but actually it starts physiologically. It starts in the body. So that's why I have that linked in with the physical development rather than the intrapersonal sort of stuff. So when we go on into the interpersonal, into the development of self, it's a sense of self. It's a sense of confidence in being allowed to play by yourself or with others, but in a way that is unsupervised and unstructured. A sense of confidence, sense of resilience in that you're left to try things again and again. Or your creativity, your imagination, everything to do with the importance of where there's role play or where there's play, kind of imaginative scenarios of things that in real life are hard, but you're playing them out through a game. And so we have all of the kind of the personal development realm. And then we get on to the interpersonal, which is just such a wonderful thing to see with children, especially in mixed peer groups, where they have the space to figure out how to work together, to figure out how to work in teams, to figure out how to work through disagreements in ways that leave them prepared for the challenges of an adult world.
Of real life.
Yes, yeah, for real life. And then, we're also talking about more intellectual skills that you develop, your things to do with your problem solving or your spatial reasoning or your mechanical reasoning because you're working with things. Even like your fine motor skills because you're building in small worlds and you're working with small things. And then the emotional sphere is quite a big one as well, and particularly when you look at dealing with setbacks or challenges. So that resilience, that emotional resilience, understanding that you can't climb that tree, but because you're coming back every single week and you've seen somebody else climb it, after a bit, you're like, okay, I can get this far. I had a child in forest school who literally it got to the point every session where either I would hear him shouting my name or a child would come to me and say, he needs you, he's stuck in the tree. And I was like, he's not stuck. He's not stuck. What he wants is for me to come and take a photo of him because he's 6 inches further than he was the week before.
Amazing.
And he wants me to send that photo to his mom. And the end of the year, he got up the top of the tree where he wanted to go. And it's, to know as a 7-year-old, to know I can't do this now, but if I work on it step by step, I'm going to be there by the end of the year. I mean, that is, in terms of the metacognition, that the benefits of that is just huge. And you don't get that unless you're going to let children climb trees.
Yeah.
The thing is, he's experiencing it because we can
Yes.
teach it. And that's what I struggle so much in schools now. We're telling this to
Yes,
children up high,
sure.
and it's so up, but it's cognitive. It's, you can do this, you can do this, keep doing this, and we're telling them, but it means very little in comparison to what you've described, where it's they've experienced
They're
it,
physically
they have
doing it.
done it. Yeah, that's it. Then it
And
means
what is challenging about those kind of the interpersonal and the well-being sort of schemes is that where a single learning focus is chosen, and that's a particular taught exercise within a 20-minute gap or whatever, however long you've allocated to it, it's just that. And it's great because we get the words to do with it and everything like that, but it's just that. Whereas when it's play, it's 7 things at once. So it's not like, it's real value for money, basically, because the free play time and unstructured free play time, especially in nature, children will be met by their environment where they're at. And they will know, because we've managed to evolve this far without set curricular, they will know what is right for them to do next in terms of the development. And just like on that, it's very interesting to see the amount of children up to 8 or 9 who still choose to spend a lot of time, like when we have parts out, lying on their tummies because they have missed out on that in very early childhood. And they're still working through, like some of them are still working through the hip reflexes. They're still working through that kind of compression of the torso to figure out how everything feels inside them. They just love doing it.
Yeah.
When you make space for that and watch what they do, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's like I often say that we forget that we're born to thrive, and when the environment is right, development will naturally unfold. We don't need to mold it. It sounds like the environment.
Yeah. And I think that is a real challenge it's a real challenge for educators. It's a challenge for parents, but in a different way. It's a challenge for educators because I know, coming from a very high pressure environment where there is huge pressure on me to make sure these children achieve academically. And the training for me in going into an alternative environment where I had to step back and let them take things at their own pace, it was hard. Like, it was hard for me personally because you do feel that pressure of it's all on you to make sure that they succeed, and how do I do it in the best way? So there is a real kind of dichotomy there of you have to do all these things, but also you have to let them do it themselves and figure it out themselves. And I recognize that in my current role, I have a luxury of that most teachers and educators don't.
Yeah. And you mentioned there a couple of things that really struck me. You mentioned that unstructured time. I mean, childhood now has become so structured, hasn't it? Through, obviously education, but like after school activities, and we schedule play dates and everything. And I'm a parent, and, childhood has become structured. And I remember, you're talking as well about risk taking. And I remember some of the things I remember from my childhood are jumping from hay bale to hay bale in my granddad's field, and my brother falling out of the apple tree. But we don't do that anymore. We need to go back to that risk taking, don't we? Like, do you find that children struggle, or parents struggle with the risk taking and getting to climb the tree? That success of knowing I did that and I couldn't get to the top of that tree. Is there a bit of a pushback against that risky play and that risk taking?
The short answer is yes. And that is, we're facing a few different challenges there on societal levels, on personal levels. I don't think we can talk about any of this without talking about screens and screen exposure as well.
Yes.
We have, thinking specifically to Ireland, there is an erosion of social trust.
Yeah.
And that's from, I would say for me, that's from three spaces. That's from a loss of shared space, shared community spaces. It's from what's happened with our societies in terms of what is mostly kind of upward social mobility, but not quite. So it means that People, because they have better jobs, are migrating to slightly different areas than where they grew up, but then they're not quite able to afford houses right where they want. So they're buying houses where they can afford. And it means that you're ending up with these interesting kind of, newer estates where people don't really know each other. And even if they're lucky enough to have a shared green space there, the social trust is not there to allow their children out to play unsupervised. And I find this really interesting because, like, for example, I was brought on for a project that was funded to work with children from a council estate on nature generally. And it was kind of the funding was directed at us based on this assumption that because they were from a lower socioeconomic background that they wouldn't have this. And the irony was they had it because their parents and their grandparents were from that estate. They grow up climbing trees, fishing in the canal, jumping into the locks in summer. The estate's built around them, sold privately. The kids don't go out and climb trees because those parents don't know their neighbors well enough to feel like their children are safe when they go out. And then the third part of this, obviously, is the online issue. And for parents, I think what the online issue is your exposure to kind of this fear of stranger danger. Previously, it may have been somebody you knew in a town locally or a child who disappeared. Now, one child disappears, and that's a story showing up on your feed multiple times a day, showing up on the radio, showing up in social media. And so your brain's perception of how high the risk level is totally skewed. So, and when parents talk about being afraid of letting their children out to play, they're not worried so much about them breaking an arm. They're worried about traffic, which is a problem, but they're worried about stranger danger. And the irony is the strangers are not outside on your shared green space while the kids are playing football. They're on your kid's iPad and they're on their mobile phone.
And that number, that statistic has not changed from like in the last number of decades. That statistic about the stranger danger, that hasn't changed. That hasn't increased. It's fear, isn't it?
But what is also really interesting about screens and childhood, this is the anxious generations. Jonathan Haidt says this. He did this with one of the articles published in The Atlantic. He talks about children basically when they're given a choice between 3 different types of activities. There's a clear preference, and the preference is children want unstructured, unsupervised time with their peers outside. That's what they want first of all. But what's interesting is if they can't get that, they're not choosing structured time outdoors. They're not choosing supervised time indoors. They're not choosing any of those things. They're choosing the next best thing, which is unstructured, unsupervised, free time with peers online. So everything that we used to do outside, and the outside is important because it's the part without, like, children will seek out those corners to make their dens because they want to practice at being grown-ups without the grown-ups interfering and getting in the way. They need to be able to do that because unless they're able to practice those situation scenarios through play, they will not gain confidence in their own ability to cope. And they won't ever move out. They'll be in your basement when they're 30 because they can't deal with the real world. Their preference is, if I can't do these, I know how important my social skills in my evolutionary brain. I know that if I don't know how to manage in a community setting, I risk getting left by the wayside then if things go tough. So it's a really strong drive in children to learn how to work together through play. And if they can't do that outside, away from the adults, they're going to choose to do it on their phone or on their iPad, away from the adults in their bedroom. The issue there obviously being that not everyone that they're going to end up interacting with is actually another child. So I just found that really interesting. Like, it's not just the reason they want to be on their phones. It's not just because of all of the addictive tactics that are used on the phones. It's because they want that. They want the unsupervised, unstructured time with peers.
Would you find that parents, mainly children, when they have that unstructured time in the forest, do they rush to the risky play, rush to the climbing the tree, or are they hesitant? You often see people in playgrounds going, get down off that, don't climb that, don't walk on the log, don't do this, because we're so afraid of children falling. And I have found myself doing that as well with my smallies and going, oh, get down. And then you kind of go, but they need to learn how to do it. As you said, it's the physical skills, the gross motor skills, the pulling yourself up, all of that. Do children rush into those risky scenarios, risky play scenarios, or do they shy away from them because they're not used to them?
There are a few things that are completely banned in forest school practice, but one of them is the phrase, be careful. Yeah. So it's such a hard thing to back away from. And yes, we find, so when children come to us and they have never been in this sort of freedom of environment before, we tend to find there are three reactions. Firstly, there's the reaction you absolutely want, which is a child that is quite well regulated and has a good inward risk reward barometer developed already. And they will, just work their way through things that you're happy at a rate that doesn't give you a heart attack. But for the others, we find that either they do what you just said, which is they've never done this before, and they're just like, and they're the ones who will have an accident quite quickly if you let them. So you can spot them a mile off, and then sometimes it's okay. We just need to. There's a little bit of supervision and education that has to happen here. So in terms of our risk management in forest school, prevention is the last one. Education is the first, and supervision is in there. So when somebody comes to us new, we always just, let's take stock of that. And they're kind of managing the exposure then to what they're up to in a staged way, in a risk appropriate. The other reaction, of course, is a child who is absolutely terrified. But what's really interesting for us is a number of times children they will say to us, I want to, but I'm scared. And generally we can say to them, if they say, I'm scared of the knife or I'm scared of fire, where it is quite a high risk, we say, I'm really glad you told me that. That means that you're going to be a really sensible and responsible tool user or firelighter or, whatever it is. So you can kind of guide. It is sensible to feel anxious and scared about things that are new and risky. Absolutely. So we would never say to a child who says that they feel scared or anxious about something, don't worry about that. You'll be grand. Listen to that feeling. Those feelings are there for a reason. Listen to them. They are there to keep you safe. We listen to them and we work through them. But then also occasionally we have children who come and they just sit there and they have never been allowed to do kind of what they want in an unstructured environment. And they will sometimes say, I'm bored. And we'll say, that's okay. And they're like, isn't it your job now to entertain me in some way? And you're like, it's okay to sit with the boredom because, that's one of the best states to be in to birth creativity. Or, they find it a little overwhelming at the start and they need just a little bit longer to gently ease in. And generally what gets them going is watching peers engaging with things. So yeah, the risk management for children who are new to any sort of unstructured outdoor play is a really key part of keeping them safe, because that is our job at the end of the day. Yes.
So interesting. I wish all children had access to a forest school and to that information, Kate, because it's so important for parents to hear. What advice would you give to parents who are living in those estates where it just feels really unsafe to them because, as you said, they don't know their neighbours?
It's tough. And I think as parents, we need to be really aware that whatever our feelings about those situations are and however closely we think we guard them, they are projected and children do pick up on them.
Yeah.
So if you are feeling super anxious about letting your child go out to play, your child's probably going to feel anxious about it as well. There's a way to kind of stage them and to create kind of collective third spaces, what we call them for young people specifically. I'm saying like early teenagers or for children, where there is a certain degree of less supervision, not no supervision, but less supervision. If we're talking about children playing outside unsupervised, we're talking about a fact that most children are not allowed to play unsupervised in their own front garden. So that's a start. Can we play in front of the house where the boundaries are really, really clear, where we don't go past that lamppost and we don't go past that lamppost. And where if, for example, that you can see them from the front window. Or if you have another neighbor that they can play outside their house also. And we just, we stage it. And then also in other environments that are not just by your house, but if you're off in taking trips outdoors, again in nature, that they know that they're allowed to play, within eyesight of you in this space here. But you're not having to be beside them all the time holding their hand in case something happens.
Because they really need that risky play, and it makes perfect sense. It's like, Dr. Peter Gray's research where he talks about how the lack of that, it makes sense that we're anxious because they're not getting to play with their anxiety. They're not getting to play with fears and their wobbliness, because if the risk isn't there, they can't learn how to deal with it.
Yes. And it's interesting also, I mean, there's not been many kind of longitudinal studies done in forest school, but one of the ones that was done was that children who were in that environment as people who were in that environment as children, and this is specifically around the risk taking and the risky play, had a much healthier relationship with substances as adults. Kind of for two reasons. Firstly, because they understood their risk reward barometer or their quadrant. They understood when it got to the point that it felt dangerous or out of control, but also they had a much healthier relationship with adrenaline and dopamine, because you get that when you climb that little bit further than you climbed last week. You're like, "Woo!" And
Yeah.
you know where to get that from other places. So it's, a child who's never been exposed to that outside of, the kind of the cheap dopamine you get from video games
Mhm.
or your social media exposure. The first time they go near substances, it's going to be a totally different experience.
Mm.
And it's easily understandable as to how that could kind of quite quickly spiral out of control. So having a healthy relationship with your kind of risk barometer and also with your internal chemical levels is really
Yeah.
important. And the thing is we are risk chasers. We're here. Each one of us is here genetically because one of our great, 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 great grandparents took a risk at some point where somebody else wouldn't. They climbed a little bit higher to get something. They tackled a slightly bigger animal than they needed to. They this risk taking behavior, this risk taking, it's just so integral and crucial to our survival genetically. Kids want to do it. So if you don't let them do it by climbing trees, they're gonna go
Yeah.
try and do it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
it's so interesting, Kate. Do you have, so thinking about, because a lot of teachers listen to this podcast as well. So I really think, you've proven beyond doubt that there is immense benefits to letting children take risks and to the outdoor play and to stepping back and let them take charge, and it being unstructured. In schools where they're fortunate enough to maybe have a green area or, trees and stuff like that, is there any elements of that we could incorporate? Because our curriculum now is valuing outdoor play and valuing our outdoor environments. Is there any little things, do you have any little bits of advice for us teachers? What could we do to bring a little bit of that in schools? Because obviously we have a different set of rules and boundaries around risk taking and safety. And, many principals would have an absolute heart attack at the thought of letting children climb trees. So, any ideas about what we could do? Any tips?
This is always a tricky one because it is so despite the fact that we have a standardized national curriculum and standardized safeguarding procedures, the culture school to school is so different. I think if you have the opportunity to take your children to a place that is slightly wilder and to allow them to explore in an unstructured way, that is really, really important. For example, working with sensory things helps a lot with the risk. So, doing blindfold activities, and that can be as simple as, children help to make a rope course, like they're all holding a bit of the rope and they make a little path with the rope. And there are other children then who are blindfolded who are able to walk along it. So
Mhm.
that's a feeling that's kind of risky, but it's on, a flat surface. It's very well managed, but the children still get slightly from it.
Love it. It's a
Yeah.
great
Um,
idea.
the small worlds, it doesn't stop. It's a theme in the little ones. It doesn't stop there, and it's a wonderful way of making the most of a small space where you're worried about having a big impact, and with bringing 30 kids into it at the same time. So allowing this kind of creativity and the imaginative play to continue in a small space sort of way, so they can make mini dens or they can make fairy houses or capitalize on the on the wonderful place that Nashio that the little people have in Irish culture. Go with that, and that helps a lot with the creativity and the imagination. And things like, there's a wonderful resource called Go Find It cards, which you get from the Sensory Trust. Again, they're in the UK, but they're simply words with adjectives on them, and the children have to go outside and find something that matches that adjective. And it's a game that can last for 5 minutes or half an hour. And it's a great way, again, of the children exploring the space in a slightly less structured way. I am an advocate of outdoor play because I feel like you can get from the outdoors, you can go outside with very few resources and a few skills, and the children will get so much out of it. They will get as much out of it from if you had set up a room, spent 2 hours setting it up with all of these lovely things. And let's face it, most teachers do not have the time to set up those sorts of resources inside, even if if school had them in the first place. So I feel like taking any of the main kind of schema to do with play and putting them outside is a kind of a cheap win
Yeah.
in terms of time and resources.
Yeah, I love it. Brilliant.
Absolutely. And Kate, kind of changing the subject there a little bit, I know you weave Gaeilge so much into your work and the folklore. Why is it such an important part of your forest schools? And do you notice any difference, when the children are engaged in the language and the storytelling in the outdoor play? Is there a correlation with that? What are the benefits of that? And why is it so important to you to weave Gaeilge through the forest schools?
That's a big question. I moved back to Ireland in 21 there were 3 languages that I spoke better than I spoke Irish. And I was slightly ashamed of that. I knew that for me, the relationship between Irish and place, I knew that it was important. And of all things, it was the SCG. I had to do the teacher's exam to get my qualification recognised in Ireland. And part of that, you have to do a local place of study, and you have to do the Loganamnacha, the place name. And I am lucky enough to have family who are Gaelgors historians, interested generally in Irish culture. And when I showed an interest in this, they all jumped on me and started just showing me, teaching me wonderful things. And I suddenly became aware of what happens when you divorce a landscape from the sounds that came into being to describe it. And what happens to folklore, to oral tradition, to do with places, but to do with plant names, to do with plant lore, to do with medicine, to do with food, and millennia of stored wisdom when you take the language away. So there's all that, which is I feel very, very strongly about that. And then I see how a lot of children feel about Irish when it's taught just as a subject in school. And I know that where Irish is in play, they will feel the same way about it as they do when we teach engineering or when we teach English or when we teach whatever it is in the forest through play. First is often they don't notice.
Yes, yeah.
It's they will I had I had a child once. I asked him to do something in Irish and he started to do the thing while telling me that he didn't understand Irish. So he didn't understand what I just said. So just the joy for me of having it in a way that is fitchy-footy. And my Irish is not perfect. People think that it's much better than it is, but I have a quite on Arja because I use every single bit that I have and I make all the mistakes. But for me, it is integral to our relationship with the land.
Yeah.
And I think that if children have it, if they're able to learn that in the context in which wore it, which is our outdoor natural world, it's gonna stick a little bit better, and it's going to the association is going to be a bit more joyful than if it's only coming out of a textbook.
Absolutely. And that's one of the characteristics of play, is that it should be joyful.
Yes, absolutely.
There's so much talk about Gaeilge at the moment. Like, what a way to revive it, actually.
Absolutely.
Get out, play.
Yeah, there's a bit of a zeitgeist with it, and I think that I think we were very fortunate to have Moncton McGann for the time that we did, and I think it's a great loss. I think he did so much, and he still had much work to do. But I think that what he has started in terms of this awareness of people's relationship to our beautiful country in terms of the language that was made to describe it is just, there's a momentum there.
Yeah.
I think that I really hope will carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kate, what is your vision then for Dúlra and the forests?
So my vision is centered around equity of access to nature. It's a thing that, because yes, it is coming onto the curriculum. I'm a little concerned maybe about some of the ways in which it's coming on, because it's coming on in a very kind of climate environmental type education way. David Attenborough has been quoted, but lots of other wonderful people have said it as well. That basically, children, if they can't love what they don't know. And if they don't love it, they're never going to try and work for it. So you can't teach children about climate change when you've never let them play in a forest by themselves, So I'm aware that the majority of what I am able to provide and what Dúlra is able to provide, we're kind of at two ends of the spectrum. We're starting to be able to secure more long-term funding for projects that are very specifically aimed at, for example, communities that are experiencing high levels of social deprivation, or looking at schools completions programs with our Wild Horizon program that's currently funded by Leader, or the work that we do with IPAS centres. And then at the other end of the scale, we have the private offerings, the camps, the after school programs. And I recognize that that's a luxury, because it's not just about the money that it costs to attend those. It's also about, are you a two-parent family where both parents have cars? Because we work in forests. So if you don't have a car as a family, or if you have younger siblings that need to be looked after, you don't get to come. And that really upsets me. So working towards equity of access to nature is really important. One of the things we want to try and do is to get a community childcare started, because that is one of the things where it could be funded, and TUSLA have redefined what they understand outdoor space in terms of learning to be from last year. So that's a really great opportunity. Also, just to kind of catch this, as Helena said, the fact that it is coming onto the curriculum, to try and catch it in the right way, to make the most of the funding opportunities that are there, and to get more longer term programs into schools, so that, again, it's not a thing just with children being able to come to after school programs. Every child goes to school. If this program is in school, then you get it. So yes, that's our vision now for the next few years.
Well, we will be supporting you in
Yeah,
whatever way
absolutely.
we can to make that happen, because what a dream it would be to actually have for schools and bring all that knowledge
Yeah.
and awareness into schools, to teachers, parents, have the pupils benefit from experiencing all the
But even
amazing.
for teacher well-being and parent well-being, I know that one of my favorite places to go is a forest that's close to us, and it's got childhood memories like that of running away from my parents, climbing, jumping, all of that. And now I bring my boys there, and I arrive there, and there's this sense of, oh yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was the first place we went back to when all the restrictions were lifted after COVID. And I remember just feeling, I don't want to go to a shopping centre. I don't want to go to a restaurant. I'm here, and this is where I want to be. But so for teacher well-being, to be able to go out and do that with your class is so important too for our
Yes.
well-being.
Yeah, it's 20 minutes. 20 minutes is what you need outside for all of your cortisol levels to drop back down to where they're supposed to be, for your amygdala, everything, just your regulation. It's 20 minutes outdoors in any capacity, and that's what it does to you and to the children.
Yeah.
So it's mentally, it's an incredibly important.
And the benefits then that would have then for the rest of the day, if you're doing that and you get that 20 minutes, the rest of the day then children are regulated, they're ready to learn, so it has all those knock-on benefits then for teaching and learning as well.
It's one of the things, you mentioned that this is much more established in the UK and also in other parts of Europe. And that is because they recognize, okay, so 5 full days in a classroom, you have children learning at a certain capacity of their potential. In the provision of kind of forest school and outdoor play as a regular thing in the UK and in the rest of Europe, is that if you have 5 days classroom based, you have children learning at a certain percentage of their capacity. So the math says that less teaching time means less learning. The truth is that when you spend that quality time outdoors, the quality, not necessarily the quantity, but the quality of class-based learning afterwards is much higher.
Yeah.
That children are better placed to receive what's being taught, and they're better regulated. They have more skills long-term, in terms of that emotional resilience, in terms of the creative imagination, everything we've talked about, to process what's being taught. So yes, you get better quality learning for less teaching time.
Yeah, win-win.
I'm chatting to my friend, and every Thursday she has forest school. And the things that she's chatting to my little boy about, and I'm chatting to her mum, it just sounds amazing. Amazing. And to do that every Thursday, and it's the full day. It's, they're not in the classroom on Thursday, they're in the outdoor classroom.
Yeah. Yes.
Sounds
And
amazing.
like I said, I would like for us in Ireland to be proactive about that, not to wait for things to get so bad that it becomes the only path necessary. And when I say things getting bad, I mean in terms of children's mental health and young people's mental health. one of the things I'm really noticing with the programs where we work with the teenagers, a lot of them are LCA students. They're essentially young adults already. Many of them have been working already for a few years. And we take them out into a forest, and they're sheepish about it at first, but they play. It's totally different play to what I'm used to with the primary school age group. And it has definitely made me understand. You see little thing on Instagram sometimes of play that doesn't make you gasp isn't worth having. So I don't gasp at under 12s play anymore. I'm well used to that. But 17-year-olds playing can sometimes be a little, they really need it. They didn't get it. They're young people heading into an adult world, and they haven't lived a childhood fully. And that's going to show. And it's going to show internally. And unfortunately, with young men, it's also probably going to end up manifesting externally as well. And I don't know why we wait until that damage happens before trying to do something about it. Because, some of you didn't spend your childhood stuck in trees, covered in mud and having stick fights, and it shows.
Yeah, they were the best bits of childhood.
Oh my God, Adele Lawler often talks about the wisdom of our parents and our grandparents. She says they had the answer. They knew what to do, because if I came home to my mother and I was complaining about something or upset about something, she would say, will you ever go outside and play?
Yeah. Play it up.
Play it out and play. And I think we need to bring that phrase back to.
Are you ready for your rapid fire questions, Kate? We have a few rapid fire questions to wrap up the episode.
Oof.
Put you on the spot.
Okay, what was your favourite thing to play with as a child?
The outdoors, small world. Yeah. Just finding a quiet corner and building everything I wanted in my imagination, but this tall.
If you had a stick to play with, what would it be?
Where might you find a stick?
That's easy. It would be a magic wand. Yeah, it would actually work.
Nurtured or nurtures your playfulness?
As a child, my mother, she was a bit of a kind of a lioness parent in that she wasn't somebody who believed in play at a child's level, which is incredibly important. As children, we need to know that there's an adult holding the space. But what she gave us in terms of experiences, in terms of space, in terms of the facilitation, that freedom, I think I owe a lot of what I'm able to do today to that.
So lovely. So lovely. And what is a playful habit that you have never grown out of?
Setting myself ridiculous challenges and wagers when I'm going about my daily life, as in if I can just sensing a little opportunity and even somebody in the supermarket being oh, I'm going to try and follow them on the left this time and see if I run into them again on the corner, or seeing if I can stack things a particular way in my shopping basket, or just making mundane or routine tasks a little bit playful. Always inside my head, because we don't vocalize that out loud in the supermarket.
People don't know you're following them. And the last question then is, what is a small joy that you look forward to every day?
When I get up in the morning, there's a point in my routine where I'll make my coffee, and I will take my coffee and I will go and sit outside, and I will have a biscuit and my dog will have a biscuit. And this is such a ritual for me at this stage. I actually asked for my 40th birthday, I asked my family for one of those big wild swimming lovely dry robes, so I can continue to go outside in all weathers. It's every morning, regardless, rain, shine, hail, anything, and just sit down with my coffee and look at the garden for a little bit.
Nice way to start your day. That sounds gorgeous.
Kate, it has been a privilege. We could have talked to you all night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're just a fountain of knowledge. Yeah. Your voice is so important in our world at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're trying our best, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. Such an interesting chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to us. And thank you to Kate for giving her time and chatting to us. If this episode sparked some ideas for bringing outdoor play and risky play or níosmó gaeilge into your teaching or your parenting, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And you can find out more about Dúlra Cill Dara in the link in the show notes. As always, thank you for listening to the Playful Lens. We really appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, make sure to share them with fellow teachers or parents. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.